All right, and we're live. Thank you for watching the Indie Dave Comics channel. I, of course, am Indie Dave. Today we're talking with the creator of The Elemental Balance. Let's see. We'll go right to that. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Zain Shinwari, and The Elemental Balance is our first comic series for InZane Comics. This has been a story that we've been writing, or I've been writing for about 2 years or so, and so now we're actually finally bringing it out to folks.
Cool.
Pretty excited about it.
All right, and where'd you get the idea originally?
It's actually an interesting story. It's just browsing through the internet. I kind of keep my mind open for inspiration. And so I was browsing through the internet and found this kind of conspiracy theory about elements and how elements, how their ancient belief and ancient thought has a lot of similarity to some modern concepts. Because if you think about the states of matter, like solid, liquid, we call it plasma, and gas, it's pretty similar to the elements. So just something from that kind of spurred to another thing, and it kind of created this thing about, what if I created this conspiracy, using some facts. And so that's how I came up with this story, or that's where the inspiration at least came from.
I mean, that's really, I'm not going to say it's an old concept, like it's not original, but I mean, the idea of the four elements, or I guess some people kind of change them up a little bit, is it's not a new thing. What kind of special twist do you think you put on it?
Well, so, that's interesting, because when I was going into this, making this story, I knew that. And I was like, people are going to do like another Avatar. I actually, some people compare it to
Captain Planet.
Yeah, people compared it to that. And so I knew I was going to go into this, but I just had to tell this story, because the twist in this story is I challenged the question of, we understand matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how much do we understand like things like that we can't touch, that are not tangible, like emotions, like initiative, like will, like things that if we all are made of the same components or same chemicals or whatever, what makes us different? So I really wanted to challenge that question, and the best way for me to represent matter is through elements. And so you see through the story, there's this these concepts start coming up. And then you don't really generally know what it's all kind of steering towards, because initially it's what I want to say, like more of like a standard story, kind of drifts in a certain direction. It feels very familiar, and then it starts steering away from what people are accustomed to from a story. So it's a bit risky, but the way I see it is, if I'm not going to take risks in writing a story, then why do it? Just I have to come up with something new and different.
Okay.
So hopefully people appreciate that.
Yeah, let's see. We're going to go ahead. We're going to jump on IndieCron here in a second.
Sure.
All right. So let's focus on you. All right. So let's see. The basic story. We cover. Well, let me pull it up first.
Sure.
Let's see. We'll share. All right, so we're up on IndieCron. You see that yet?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Yeah. Let's see. All right, so we got the IndieCron and the Indiegogo in the chat for anybody that wants to see it. Let's see. So that's the IndieCron. The art's really cool. How did you meet the artist?
I met him through a freelancing site called People Per Hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I've browsed through several artists, and that's how I came across his artwork. I've always been kind of more drawn towards the cartoonish style.
Yeah.
My stories are kind of serious in nature, but with the contrast of cartoon style, I feel like it gives this interesting contrast. But it's just something that I'm kind of drawn to. So that's where I found.
Right. I'm gonna do this a little bit backwards here. If anybody is in the chat or watching, If you go to the campaigns page, it's pretty much near the bottom. Let's see. You have to scroll down quite a bit to find it. For those that are looking for it, there it is, right there on the side here. And then you can click on it, and here we go, the elemental balance. And this is issue 2.
Actually, yeah, issue 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So we'll look at some of the artwork here. I mean, we're getting 3 books here, and I guess you're working on a 4th one right now.
Yeah, actually, the Indiegogo is going to be out in 2 weeks for the 4th one.
Nice. All right. Okay. And this one, the first 3 are already done, right?
Already done. I have them in print. They're ready to go out. If anybody gets them on in demand, they'll be getting it out like within a week or so.
Wow, that's really cool. That's definitely a good thing to know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we'll go to the Indiegogo, and let's see. So it's teens and up. All right, let's see. So here's the story right now.
And that's the first chapter that you read.
Mm-hmm. And it was really good. I really enjoyed reading it. A lot of times, people will be like, "Hey, check this out for me." And I'll be like, "Yeah, okay, that's all right." But this one, I kind of went in with this one going, "Yeah, it's probably going to be in." And I read it. And I was like, "Wow, the story really got me," and some other stuff really got me. And one of the things I mentioned before we came on, let's see. Well, chapter 1, the groundbreaking news is about a new discovery. The chapter starts off with a monologue while scenes of tragic incident from a memory are illustrated in the background. The monologue poses the question: if Earth was created with elemental energy, then what happened to those energy forces? According to the laws of physics, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. And from there, you get the story of I don't remember her name, the Australian girl.
Chloe.
Okay. And she has apparently, I guess everybody gets their powers from dying as a result of the elements.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody, like whatever element they possess is the element that they die by.
Okay. So one of the things I want to bring up right off the bat, I've had this discussion. I talk about lettering a lot, or not a lot, but I recently talked about it. And lettering is one of those things that either you don't notice. If it's really good, you don't notice it. And if it's really bad, it really stands out. For whatever reason, maybe it's just because I was just talking about it with some people. The lettering on this is actually really good. It's really good and really stands out. I like the font. The font's really exciting and dynamic with these boxes right here as they're explaining what's going on. They got the white letters on the black boxes with that kind of glowing outside. I think it's really neat. I think it really stands out. You've done some stuff with the colors of the fonts, and I think it really it's really kind of adds a little more excitement to the reading. And maybe it's because it's also because a lot of this is kind of exposition, so it adds a little bit more energy to that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, lettering is one of those things that like you mentioned, that if it's done wrong, people will get annoyed by it. But what's interesting, that lettering in comic book is an art of its own, because what it does is it directs your eyes to different things, to different clues, to different hints, or just to orient your eyes towards the scenes. So it's a tricky thing, and also you can build emotion from the way. I mean, you can use color, you can use size, you can use different font that it captures emotion. So it's something fun to play with.
Yeah, and this it's very professional looking too. You said this is your first comic?
Correct. Yeah, this is my first.
Yeah, if you look here, like this, just this little bit where it's right here, and you see how it like kind of stretches out the word bubble. It's really neat, and it stands out as not. It definitely doesn't look like an amateur comic. It doesn't look like some newbie just kind of threw the lettering together like as an afterthought.
You know what's interesting about lettering is you have some basic guidelines, but there's no really set rule on how to do it. It's kind of like, you do it however way you feel like is the right way to do it. So that's what's interesting. So you can really own it.
It's like the second artist on a book or the third artist on a book with the colorist and all that.
Yeah.
All right. So give us a basic overview of the whole story. What's going on?
So basically what's happening in the full story is this girl named Chloe, she's really interested in finding out more about the elements. And as you read through the first chapter, you realize why. It turns out that she actually is a water elemental, and she gained the powers after dying from, she was in a cruise boat and the cruise capsized from a tsunami. And so now she's getting these dreams, and so she follows these dreams and finds the earth elemental. So they start realizing that they are connected to the other elementals by their dreams. And so Chloe's she really wants to find out why she got these powers, because she believes that there has to be some reason for it. So during her journey of finding one of the other elementals, they think they're just going to find one another and try to figure out how this happened and why it was them. But what they don't realize is they're being hunted by someone. And this person is one of the core to the story. We introduce this person in chapter 4, actually, but there's hints and different conversations. We find out what this person wants at the end of chapter 3, but we get introduced to this person in chapter 4. And then the story takes a different turn.
And so basically the idea is as more elementals kind of gain their powers. I know she in the first one, she kind of had a dream and saw the earth elemental guy, Baraka.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that. And that's because, did you name him after the president?
No, I didn't. I totally forgot. Wasn't there a Street Fighter guy named Baraka?
There might have been.
No, I actually, so what I wanted to do, and this is not part of the story, is just when I was writing these names, I wanted to think of it kind of symbolic. So Baraka kind of has a rock in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that.
And then Chloe is kind of a little bit flowy,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have anything to do with the story, but that's just kind of how the names kind of came to me. And
Okay.
by the way, I actually looked, because he's from Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at Kenyan names to determine that. What are the different names? And that was just something that stood out.
Everybody's going to think you're like a conspiracy theorist now. Baraka from Kenya. Oh, yeah. We know what this guy's all about.
My agenda.
Let's see. And so let's see. Then you'll have the wind. I saw him on the front. You have the wind elemental guy. Looks like Japanese.
Yeah, he's Japanese.
We're looking at some of the art here. I really like this. This is really cool. There he is, right there. Is your Japanese wind elemental guy, martial artist, obviously. I just assume.
Yeah, you have to, right? You have to.
Yeah. So I'm just going to assume they're all going to form kind of like a super team type deal.
Well, this is they're not there yet. They're in this series. They're not looking to like save people per se. They are more like concerned about themselves, and with these different personalities, like Chloe is just a very inquisitive person. She really thinks that she needs to find answers. Baraka is someone who wants to be like, hey, let's pretend this never happened, because he's a very careful guy. He's just like, let's just go in our own ways. So you deal with different personalities. When you meet Daichi, he thinks it's like something divine, and so you kind of have this. They kind of have this first almost like clash, but because they know that they're being hunted, they kind of have to form this alliance. But it's not necessarily to save people. That will kind of, maybe spur in a later series. But right now it's more finding out who they are. Essentially, what this story does, it is a journey. But in the process, we're actually we're defining the word elemental balance, because that title is not apparent yet on what, on what it holds, the importance of it in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to discover what that elemental balance is in every issue. And then once we tell you, everything starts to make sense. And for me, I wrote this story from the beginning to the end. So there's an ultimate conclusion. It's not an ongoing, series, because I wanted it. I mean, it will be eventually, but this is a complete story because I want things that happen in the end, like the ending, to have like clues of it from chapter one. So by the time you read the last chapter, you're going to want to read some of the previous chapters again to see where we put those clues.
Okay. I'm still screen sharing my tweeting. Boomerang. All right. It's really cool. You know what? The art kind of reminds me a little bit of do you know who Trent Kanayuga is?
Who?
His name. He did a comic in the '90s called Creed. He was doing comics around the same time that Ethan Van Sciver was doing original Cyberfrog, and the art's very similar. It's got a very kind of similar style.
Oh yeah, I just Googled it. Yeah, it really is. Kind of a little bit exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a.
And like my artist, he has what do they call that? He has a lot of inspiration from Japanese style.
Mm-hmm.
He's really inspired by the Japanese style, and I feel like he gains a lot of that inspiration in his artwork. So you kind of see that style.
All right. So, how long have you been? This is your first comic, and you're just the writer and the letterer, apparently.
Yes.
All right. How long have you been considering, or how long have you been into comics?
Into as in making them.
Well, all right. Let's just let's go right back to like when you first started getting interest in comics, and at all.
Oh, I was really young. I don't remember what age, maybe 5 or 6, and my dad took me to a comic book shop that had used comics,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I just got a bundle of them, and I think I read there's a Spider-Man comic that I read, and it was interesting because I was getting bored of that comic when I was reading it because it was about Spider-Man. I mean, it was a Spider-Man title, but it didn't show Spider-Man. It only showed Spider-Man in the beginning, and it was from the narrative of a bank robber and him looking at Spider-Man and talking about it. And towards the end, it kind of ties back in of what this bank robber hated Spider-Man, but he kind of saw what Spider-Man did for him, and he's actually was a double agent or whatever, and he was actually helping Spider-Man out. So he was kind of a hero. And it was just really interesting of what they did with the story and how they took it from a different perspective. Like, I knew who Spider-Man was, but they just took a different twist on it. And I mean, I just kind of fell in love with the storytelling of comics. And then after that, when I was a little bit older than that, I thought I was going to make comic books when I grow up. So we had this assignment in class to come up with a professional signature. So I actually made my signature look like a little cartoon monster with a little Z, and then I put a little circle around it, and then made a jaw out of the S. And so if you look at my logo right now, that is my signature.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I actually worked in corporate America for 7 years. I was doing pretty well. It was in oil and gas. And, we were going through layoffs, and I just was like, I want to do what I set myself to when I was a kid. I was actually signing a contract, and someone said, "Hey, this contract, the signature looks kind of funny." And, it was one of those things that one moment after another, and I eventually quit. Call me crazy.
So you quit the oil industry to write comics.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. What kind of change has that been like?
It's been tough. It's been, it's been tough because you don't have a structure. You have someone telling you what to do, so you kind of have to organize yourself. I've saved quite a bit, but you have to also manage your budget as well. But it's been a little bit of a struggle, but it's very rewarding at the end of the day. I mean, it's just crazy to think that I can do something that I love.
Now, in Zane Comics, that's you're just is it going to be a self-publishing company, or well, I guess if it's a company, it wouldn't be self-publishing. But are you planning to do more comics under that name?
Yeah, I have on the roster about like 10 comics.
Wow.
Yeah, they're in their preliminary phases, as in like the bone structure is made. And actually, I have at the end of the 10-year, I mean, it's going to take somewhere 10 years to tell all these stories, I would assume. But by the end of that, there's also something that will tie in all the stories into an ultimate shared universe. You don't have to read all the stories to enjoy it, but then there's going to be a separate title that's going to bring all these characters back into an ultimate goal. So I've kind of built all that structure already. I have timelines as far as like story timelines are already built out. And right after this issue, I'm working on a story called The Lost King. And I mean, I'm kind of like about 30%, 40% done with the story on that one. As far as like finishing it out, I go in phases. I create basically bone structure, then I kind of put a little flesh on it, and then I ended up with I go through like 3 phases basically.
Well, the Elemental Balance got a lot of flesh on it. Looks like so far. Like I said, I read that first chapter, and I was totally blown away. I was like, wow, this is really good. I got right into the story right away, and even though I kind of, and maybe I don't know, I kind of felt like I know. Oh, this I think this is what's going to happen. And as far as the whole side of the story, but from what you're saying, well, I'm probably totally wrong. I'll be pleasantly surprised for the rest of them.
Yeah, and that's kind of the fun thing is like when people are guessing, and some people get it right and some people get it wrong, but but that's just kind of the joy of making these things. Like if you can have somebody be that invested in it to even consider thinking about what the possibility of this comic is, I mean, that's just rewarding in itself. And that's why that's really why I do it.
That's really cool. All right, so are all this future stuff, all these future comics you have going on, or you're kind of structuring out right now? That's all your ideas? Do you have other people that are working with you? No,
it's all my ideas. I do want to bring writers later on, but it's one of those things that like I see that in a lot of other publishing companies, they tend to be where they take a small percentage, but the writer has to pay for the artist and everything. Yeah. I want to get to a place where I can pay for that because, to me, there's so much talent out there, and it almost feels kind of sad because a lot of talented people just go to corporate America or they get a job and they don't do what they love just because they need to make ends meet or make, so for me, I want to change that. I want to, if I, in my little world, I want to be able to at least help as many people as I can, whether it's artists or, it's writers. So I want to create something to where I can start paying for those pages and hire good writers who wouldn't have taken that risk otherwise,
Yeah. So you're coming from corporate America and the oil companies, you said. Mm-hmm. Would you consider yourself more business minded than maybe you've observed with other comic creators?
Possibly. I do come from a different mindset, from a professionally trained standpoint. I actually did supply chain for oil and gas. So I made contracts, drilling contracts, and procured equipment for these companies. And I'm talking about like $40-50 million worth of stuff. So I do come from a different perspective on things and how to, get suppliers, doing bids, checking quality. I do have a different mindset, but it's still different. And that's one of the things that I kind of, I look at some people and they're like, oh, I paid so much for shipping, for just the packaging materials. And I'm like, you could buy that from like somewhere else and reduce your costs. You can bulk it. There's different ways to reduce your costs. So I might have a little bit of different mindset. But what's interesting is when I'm making these comics, it's like I have to wear two different hats.
Mm-hmm.
When you're being business oriented, you're almost very logical. When you're being creative, you can't be so logical, if that makes sense, because
No, I understand what you're saying.
you tunnel vision yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to open your horizon when you're being creative. You got to let inspiration come to you. So it's almost two different mindsets.
Well, you gotta kind of be more loose in your thinking when you're creating, because you're kind of creating something from whole cloth, and you're creating a world, and so I mean it's all fictional and all that, and then you kind of have to bring yourself into the real world when you have to say, okay, if I want to continue doing this, it has to make money.
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta come back to the real world. You gotta figure out how to. I mean, making money. There's two ways of making money, right? You increase your profit, right? But
Yeah.
the best way to make money is you reduce your cost.
Mm-hmm.
How you increase your margin, because at the end of the day, if you increase your your price point, you're kind of going against competition. So the more you can bring down your cost, the better it is.
All right. Now we talked because I had a little confusion earlier. I went to your original Kickstarter because that was on the first chapter Tapas. That happened to be what I saw. You're on Indiegogo.
Correct.
You did run a Kickstarter. Is that one completely dead, or?
The Kickstarter, no, it went successfully, and from that, it was actually someone said, if you already ran a Kickstarter, why not do an Indiegogo? And so I ran an Indiegogo, and it actually did pretty well as well. But I like the format of Indiegogo better, so that's why Chapter 4 is going to get public, or is going to get issued through Indiegogo.
Okay. Now I saw the goals weren't that big.
No.
So that comes from keeping your costs down.
Well, no, I mean, if you look at it from a standpoint of printing, yes, I'm within the cost, but covering costs for like the artist and the colorist, it doesn't, that cost doesn't cover it. But for me, my goal is not right now to make profit. My goal is to introduce these stories to as many audience as I can.
What seems to be the trouble spot for most of these guys is shipping, from what I've seen.
Yeah, shipping gets very expensive. The best thing is to in my opinion, is you get with a 3PL, third party logistics, and a lot of times they have negotiated rates with USPS. I'm using one called I think it's called XPS Logistics. And it's really cool because it pretty much gives you a flat rate.
Is this the fulfiller from the printer?
No, I don't do a fulfiller. I have it all shipped to me, and then
because this is the first time I've heard of this. The third party.
Oh, you haven't heard of? Okay, so
let's talk about that a little bit.
Typically, 3PLs are, yes, what you're saying. They're fulfillers. Yes, you're right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But this is more of just a predominantly company that has they buy in millions, I guess, with the USPS, and so they get reduced
rates. Okay.
They'll kind of transfer that over to you. They'll keep a little bit of margin, but at the end of the day, it's still cheaper for us than it is to go directly with USPS or someone else.
Okay, so let's see. You're fully funded as of right now?
Correct.
All right. And are you on I'm sorry. What do they call it? Are you on In Demand right now?
Yes, I'm on In Demand right now. Yep.
All right. So people can still check out the site. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on.
And another thing I want to bring up is that Chapter 4 is going to be released in 2 weeks. You can wait for Chapter 4 and buy all 4 issues at once. But just know that it'll take time before the Indiegogo campaign is over, like another 30 days or so, and then the time for printing. So if you want these comics now, you can get it from In Demand, and you'll have it shipped within a week.
All right. So on this one, let's go over some of your tiers. See what's going on here. For $25, this is your featured. You're going to get all 3 printed comics.
Great.
All right. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Let's see. Paper action figure. Tell me about that.
It's a printout. I'll send a PDF, and it'll be like a fun thing to do with your kids or whatnot, where you can just, everything is labeled. You cut it out, and it makes these little Minecraft looking characters. So that's actually Baraka, the Earth Elemental, and I made 4 of them for the 4 elementals.
Okay. Let's see. E-Particles 101. That's it's 1 digital download.
Correct.
All right, that's $5. Let's see, and
that was the story I was telling you about.
oh, okay, yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Get it signed. So that's was it like, 1 signed book? What is? Oh, that's an extra, right?
Yeah, it's an add-on. To anything that you print out. Like if you buy a comic in print, you get this add-on, and I'll sign the comics. I mean, I'll sign all 3 if you want. So.
Okay. Let's see. Single add-on. Get 1 comic in print for $10. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. For $15, you're going to get all 3 in digital. Mm-hmm. And let's see. Is anybody? Oh, you got 1 claimed on the water necklace. Tell me about that. So in the story, I mean, you remember it was probably like 3 pages in or 4 pages in, where Chloe's boyfriend buys her a necklace. Mm-hmm. At the museum. So that's that necklace. I recreated it. So did you design the necklace after the book, or the other way around? No, I designed it while we were making the book. And so towards the end, once it was all made, I was like, hey, this would be pretty cool to make merchandise out of, that necklace. So it would probably have been easier if I found a necklace first and then designed it afterwards. But, and cheaper for that. But it was one of those things. I don't write these stories in intent of making merchandise or anything like that. It just, after it's done, because I want to focus on the story. And then after it's done, if something like that comes up, I'm like, oh, that'd be pretty cool if I make, merchandise or whatever. It's an afterthought. It looks nice. It looks like a nice, nice little thing. All right, the Big Bang. That's $20 to get that's just the necklace. And you actually get the digitals as well. Oh, okay. So basically, if you think about it, you're paying $5 for the necklace if you want to see it, whatever way you want to put it. All right. Let's see. And I'm looking. 4. The cover of 4 looks awesome. Yeah. Thanks. All right. So that one's coming out in 2 weeks. All right. Let's see. The Big Bang. Let's get everything. Right. What are we getting with that? Basically everything that I have printed out, and there's more. There's going to be like close-up pictures later down in that. If you scroll down, essentially it's a couple of posters, bookmarks, different kind of merchandise. All right. Well, we'll get down there. All right. So we'll get that there in a second. Let's see. Big Bang Plus. What is that? Oh, free international shipping. Yeah. Is that that's the bonus on that one? Yeah. And so and then you also get 4 metal pins to make it worth worth the extra. Mm-hmm. They're actually like 3D printed. I mean, not 3D printed. I mean, they're like beveled. It's not. All right. That's pretty cool. Let's see. Custom art. Let's see. What's this one? So basically, if you want to make yourself into a elemental, or you want some kind of commission drawing, like we'll have Luke do that, and we'll get it colored. And if you're in the U.S., I'll send a poster as well. All right, that's cool. Let's see. Alchemist. I assume that has to be that's going to come up later in the book. Yes. It's gonna all right, so let's try not to do too many spoilers, but what is that all about now? Alchemists are basically the shield agents of this story, for lack of better terms. All right. Yeah, they're a secret agency that are kind of determined to find elementals, essentially. Okay. Let's see. And it was like you get put in the book as an alchemist? Correct, yeah. As an agent? All right, that's cool. Let's see. Immortality, become a boss. What's that all about? So this is the Nick Fury. So one lucky person pays $1,000 and they get to be Nick Fury. Right. Essentially, yeah. I mean, I just put it out there, and you never know. Let's say this story actually
because I will, whoever does get that, I will make that person a permanent, their name, their feature, whatever they say will be it will be permanent. So if this story even becomes, let's say, a movie, that person's name will be that guy or girl.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
It's not gender specific, so
yeah.
whatever.
Cool. All right. Let's see. So you said there's a down here at the bottom. There's a
if you scroll down.
There's some of the book.
Yeah, that's
more of the pages. I don't make people too dizzy when they look at this later. All right, there. Is that you?
Yeah, that's me. That's my mug.
All righty. And there's he's all hidden behind his hat and his beard.
Yeah. With his pose. This is what I was talking about earlier about the inspiration. So earth, liquid, water, gas, wind, plasma, fire.
Okay, that's really cool. Oh, and you know what? A lot of people don't like put that together. Like you'll get the earth, water, fire, wind, but you don't get like the kind of solid, because a lot of people are like, okay, well, water, they also do ice.
Yeah.
But you, and I don't know if she does or not. You don't need to spoil anything, but you never usually get that this part, the states of matter kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here you go. Here's the perks. All right. There's the, let's see, $5. 3. Let's see, $10. There's your one comic. 25, all 3. Here's your the big bang right here.
Right, yeah.
So you're gonna get all 4 action figures, all 4 paper people. Original artwork, pencils, and these are all like the character sketches and kind of doing out the pages and stuff.
Yeah, right. That's great.
All right.
And you can, these things will be helpful if you want to learn how to ink. You can, start inking off of these pictures.
Yeah, I backed Bigfoot Bill, and I got one of his original sketch pages. That was one of the things I paid for extra. And that was, oh my god, I got that and I was all excited. His name's on it, and he taped a little piece of the script on the back of what was on the page. It's one of the neatest things I've ever gotten.
Was it the original?
Yeah, it was. It was the original pencil sketch. I don't think it's not the final page. Like he eventually, it was just the basic kind of sketching of what the like thumbnail kind of thing. I mean, it's a little more detailed than just a thumbnail, but I mean, he did like a basic pencil sketch of what's going to happen on the page, and then I have to assume, because it wasn't inked, that he cleaned it up more and put a little more detail into it, and then inked over the other one. But I was so excited to get that. It was really neat. Let's see. So original inked artwork.
Yeah.
All right. All 3 comics in digital. Let's see. Read on the go. All 3 comics in print. Get the necklace. Get the wristband's kind of neat. Die cut vinyl sticker. That's pretty cool. I stick that in my short box, my comic short box. Let's see. A sticker page. Oh, these are more stickers?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
You won't run out of stickers in this campaign.
And it's a bookmark, I assume? Yeah, it is bookmark.
Right, yeah.
And coloring book page. It's neat. What would you say is the age range for this comic?
Well, typically, I mean, any age can read it, because there's not like much violence or sexual references or anything like that. But the story is kind of relatively complex. I would say about age 13, just so they understand it better. But really, any age can read it.
Okay, so it's not something you have to worry about your younger ones.
You don't have to worry about a younger kid reading it. There's no issues.
All right, we're also getting a sketch cover page and chapter 4 art post. So that is, I'm going to say again, that's a really cool looking cover for that chapter 4.
Thanks.
And game plan art poster.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mention this. Game plan is another story that I'm working on, but this doesn't follow the same shared universe, because I'm one of my the shared universe are going to be more like superpowers type stories. This one is, I mean, it's still fictional, but it's kind of almost a little bit rooted in reality. It's a story that I told my wife when I first met her, and she fell in love with it. And so it's a story of a mixture of culture between India and America. And so I think it'll be pretty interesting for an audience to see for both, because if you're Indian, you're going to have a different culture reference to the U.S., to American culture, and then if you're American, you're gonna be exposed to an Indian culture, and it's just a merge of two. And I mean, there's a background story obviously to it. It's not about representing culture. That's just kind of an byproduct. But it's a different kind of story though, and it's not a typical comic book story. It'd be more of like a novel, but like I said, I want to do things a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. We'll have to have a look up, keep a lookout for that one too. All right, exclusive backers, and this is all the have yourself put in the comic and stuff.
Yeah, just made them in gold and chrome to make them look expensive.
Yeah. Now, do you have any background in anything? I know you said you worked corporate stuff. Do you have a background in any kind of graphic design or anything?
No, I don't. I mean, just from high school and just doing it, for fun. I was a marketing officer for my student organization, but that's the extent of it. I've just always kind of had that mindset. It's one of those things that, like, you feel like you're good at something, but you don't pursue it just because you think that it's, art doesn't pay or whatnot. So I just never. In high school, I pursued 3D animation, Photoshop, After Effects. I did all those, but then in college, I just didn't. And now I'm brushing up on a lot of those skills. But yeah, all the graphic design on this page, everything I did on my own.
That's pretty neat. That's kind of because I was drawing a lot. I was never that great. I feel like if I had really pursued it, I could have gotten at least good enough to be a decent comic book artist. But right after high school, I went to college, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like a viable job. You know what I mean? It's like, no, who becomes a comic book artist?
This is what's so interesting is because I almost call my comic book company Zenaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, today's time reminds me of the pre-Renaissance, when art wasn't valued anymore. Everyone was just very strict on books, but I mean, art has a lot, for the society and for culture, but it's just going away just because of, there's no jobs in it. Even your majors, DC and Marvel, they're outsourcing too. Like, I feel like they should have the responsibility to hire U.S. artists. Somebody like an indie creator. It might be tough because it gets expensive. I mean, it makes sense, no doubt. I mean, they spend a lot of time doing it, but it just becomes very expensive to create a comic. But yeah, that's just kind of my view on things. That art's kind of slowly, not fading away, but not given that much preference as it used to.
Well, I think a lot of it is people, like we were talking about earlier, they see art and business as two, completely different things.
Yeah.
When you really need McFarlane's big on this. He says he's good. He's fluent in art and he's fluent in business, and he knows. Okay, well, to do this, I need to make sure I have the money to do it. He's like, okay, so how am I going to do that? So he gets that in his head that it's more than just writing. It's more than just writing. It's more than just drawing. There's the business aspect you have to know if you want to make money doing it and to continue doing it.
Yeah, agreed. And actually, if you look at the bigger picture, there's a lot of room for artists, because if you think about like structural, like people making buildings and whatnot, a lot of times they're very plain, and why not bring artists into those? I mean, that's a business and bringing architecture together, like bringing art together. There's a lot of ways to do it. It doesn't happen that often. People think too much, I don't want to use it practically, but I'm using it in a derogatory term. But there's like they say that some people think from the left side of their brain, and other people think from the right side of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine what you can do if you merge the two different groups.
Yeah, Yeah, I remember I was watching one of Doug TenNaples' streams the other day, and he was like, in college, he was like, you want to make sure if you're an artsy type person, make sure if you're going to date anybody in school, make sure you date somebody on the business side.
Yeah, opposite.
Yeah, well, there's that, and then there's that whole idea of you know, if you're going to get married, if you get two artsy people together, you're always going to be poor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing wrong with making a living, making sure your rent is paid, your bellies are full.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Oh, right.
Imagine, I mean, like this is my like dream. I mean, to imagine making a living off of something you love. Like that's the goal. You know, not I don't care for being rich. The goal is doing something you love and making a living out of it.
Wouldn't hurt to be rich though.
Yeah, doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt.
All right. So let's see. We talked a little bit about your interest in comics since you were a kid. What do you think? Who do you think was your favorite growing up? Who your favorite comic book character was?
I had different favorite characters. When I was younger, I was more towards the Marvel characters, and as I grew older, I got more towards the DC characters. I think I'm more like towards Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think it had to do with after watching Smallville, or there was actually a song in Smallville about like how Superman lives in a cardboard box, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting, you know, because now and especially I feel like that towards DC Comics. I mean, I kind of haven't read many Marvel comics anymore, but a lot of DC Comics, it's not just about a specific villain, but it's also an internal struggle that these characters go through, you know. So I've kind of been a little bit more inclined towards those characters. But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd be Superman.
Yeah. Well, all the you notice the differences really between DC is everybody in DC, or at least all the main characters, are kind of godlike.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have almost. I mean, Batman not so much, but I mean, even he, like they say, give him enough time and he'll always win.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marvel characters are always. It was more about their secret identities than it was their, you know, like Spider-Man isn't about Spider-Man. It's about Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Peter Parker being Spider-Man and how he deals with being Spider-Man. And Superman is about Superman trying to be as much as he can to be Clark Kent.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was more like I was started in the '90s. I was definitely very Marvel. The X-Men, I had a really long X-Men run and that kind of stuff. And I think now the only thing I'm collecting right now is DC. As far as there's two series I collect. One of them is Valiant Exo, and the other one is what's her name? Silencer. And it's just because I was out of comics for 20 years and then picked it back up. And that's the characters that I seem to hold on to. My pull list has actually gotten smaller as because I guess I had a lot of short series before that I would put on my pull list, and once those series ended, I hadn't really picked up anything else. So my pull list has actually gotten a little bit smaller. Usually, it would be between $25 and $30 a week, and that's gone down the last couple of weeks. I think between 15 and 20.
Yeah, you know, and I've heard from people that they don't like to read the longer series, just like sometimes with DC, because it's almost like you had to read, 10 years of previous comics to understand what's going on. And so some of those shorter series kind of get on people's pulls lists just because you can get engaged and involved in it quicker. And, hopefully, I'm kind of using that strategy for myself that, I'm trying to create short comic series. And, I know I didn't mention this, but like this comic series is going to be 6 issues in total.
Okay. So this will be 6. So then the Elemental Balance will be 6 issues total. Right. And that'll wrap up a full story arc.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. He'll leave off with a little bit of
you'll have room to grow.
Right, exactly. But not to where it's like annoying, where it's like a cliffhanger. You're like,
yeah,
how long do I have to wait for this?
Mm-hmm.
just to build the possibility of, you know, potentially extending it, and then just kind of seeing what the response is. You know, if it's a positive response, you know, I'll build on it. But if it's, you know, if it's, there's not that much eagerness for another issue, then I'll be satisfied that I finished this first series. I mean, I mean, I have a full roster of comic ideas that I want to do, and you know, they're almost different genres. Like The Lost King is more of like the Game of Thrones type of story. So let's see how people respond to that too.
Well, that is really cool. We're going to go ahead. I think they're going to start Drawn and Quartered here soon. So, okay. So we're going to wrap it up. Everybody, I want you to go to IndieCron, and I want you to check out the Elemental Balance. And I think it's, I read that first chapter, and I was totally blown away. The art's really good. The storytelling's really good. And like I said, it's really professional looking. For a first comic, it's very professional looking. And I can see by your background and what you said, I can see where that comes from. You didn't like say, okay, I got to put something out right away. It really shows that you put a lot of work into it. You put a lot of thought into it. Like I said, the thing that caught my attention right from the beginning was the lettering. I was just like, wow, it really is dynamic and really is exciting, and makes it exciting to read.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, so everybody, I've only got one guy in the chat. Turbo Live, thanks for showing up. Oh, it's Wanger. Hey, Wanger. Oh, man. So, yeah, definitely, everybody check it out. Thank you, Inzane, for showing up. We'll definitely keep an eye out for your other stuff.
Appreciate it.
And like I said, if you got something new, definitely hit me up, and we'll do the show anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Tomorrow, we're going to try. I've got somebody. Hopefully, I don't want to say his name right now, but it's a pretty big name that we're going to have on the show. We're going to talk about one of his projects coming out soon, and we're going to talk about his company. We might have, and if we get him on, we probably will have a few other guys on, or at least one other guy. And it's not going to be. It's not. It's a pretty big name. So check me out tomorrow, and I'll verify with him. And it's going to be a good show. It should be excellent. Thank you again, and y'all have a good night.